Welcome to Rogue Bogues. This is the basketball series. You have joined episode 53. What a week it's been. A lot going on trade-wise, pro. So we have a lot to get through today.
Bogues, I thought you were going to trade me to someone like some fucking 12th guy on the Simmons podcast, and a player to be named later, but I guess I survived. That was, breathe a sigh of relief, I'll tell you that.
Cash considerations, we're always listening. Cash considerations.
$28 and a gift card to Wendy's.
By the way, did you see the Orlando Magic tweet? It was gold.
That was fantastic.
Awesome.
Cash considerations.
So highly recommend go on their Twitter account. They announced the trade and they just did a photo of a bucket of cash and said, "Here's our announcement for the trade." Cash considerations.
Welcome.
Great.
It's like welcome to Orlando. Cash considerations.
Exactly. Social media team in Orlando. You deserve a raise for that one. But let's get stuck into. We'll get to the trade shortly, but as we do on a weekly basis, our team of the week.
Bogues, you picked the same exact team, so let's just go through it.
Did we really?
Yeah, we thought this for the first time yet. We matched up same team.
Wow, the second one, the week, the shitty team. That's surprising. But anyway, my honorable mentions for really good teams of the week. Obvious ones: Phoenix, Dallas, Memphis, Utah back on a roll after they got team of the piss week a couple of weeks ago. Cleveland and Toronto, they're all honorable mentions. So for anyone firing up, but I had to go Boston Celtics. There's some people out there saying give some love for the Celtics and credit due. We've been smacking them a lot this season, up and down, helter skelter, tough team to support, all that hoorah. But credit where it's due. 7 straight, 9-1 in their last 10 now. There could be a bit of an asterisk on their wins, pro, but you can only win what's in front of you, and they would generally, lose some of these games and maybe go 4-3 or 3-4. Their last 7 for their 7 straight: New Orleans, Miami, Charlotte, Detroit, Orlando, Brooklyn, who are in all sorts, and Denver. So probably Miami, Charlotte, Denver, the 3 best wins in there. But you can only win what's in front of you. Schedule hasn't been the greatest, but like I said, you just never have too much confidence in the Celts. They do have an easy schedule in February and January, but that schedule has put them back in the mix in the East, which is good to see. Tatum, 25, 8, and 4 a night. Derek White acquisition is an interesting one. It provides much more consistency than Schroeder did. So I like it. They really didn't give up much to get him neither, and he can be a really useful piece. This is a guy that was on the USA team a couple of years ago and went to that World Cup. So he's definitely no slouch. So what are your thoughts, bro?
I think that, look, I've been as harder on than Boston than anybody. And I think just they were bad to watch, ball movement, lack of defense, lack of just caring. Now, they missed a bunch of people with COVID and all that stuff. They're finally at full strength. And they look good. Like, I got to give it to them. They look good. They're fighting hard. They didn't make any major trades, which is great. They didn't get rid of their core pieces. They added White, which gives them a little bit of a different dynamic. A good ball handler, a more steady player, a good defender. Probably better in the locker room than Schroeder was. And I think they're pretty good. Right now, they're sort of getting up there. I think they're like 7th in the East. I mean, they were like left for dead, like 10-11 about a month ago, and now a few weeks ago, and now they're sort of playing well. I got to give it to them. They're playing very well.
Yeah, credit where it's due. So we'll see where that goes. Funnily enough, Jaylen Brown. I don't remember when it was. It was maybe 15 odd games ago. Put a tweet out saying something along the lines of, "All right, we're flicking the switch. The energy's going to change now. We're going to get back on track." And credit to him. They have been. They've been much better the last 15 odd games. So I don't know what changed in that locker room, whether it was one of those famous player-only meetings, but Jaylen Brown knew something we didn't, because they've been really, really good. And like you said, you could say playing down to their competition, but the Celtics in November and December would have lost a lot of those games. So this is a step in the positive direction for you Celtic fans. Now, team of the week that's been bad. Honorable mentions, usual suspects for me: Houston, Detroit, OKC, Portland, Washington still in there, Indiana. Charlotte is one that I almost put in there, because Charlotte have just they've fallen from grace. They had a bit of COVID issues, they had a bit of injury issues, but no excuse to be this bad. They have made a small little tweak to their roster, which I think is a big help. But for me, Pro, and you, it's the Los Angeles Lakers. Just an absolute shit show, and we've been hard on them, and so we should. But 3-7 in their last 10. They've lost 2 straight for their streak, but it's just the way in which they've lost. You know, they've been down 30 in games, and then they'll have a fourth quarter where you're like, you know, it's the complete opposite, and they fight back. It's like just a bit of consistency. It just looks horrible. Seems like there's a lot of locker room issues. And look, they don't really have an excuse right now, Pro. They're close to healthy. We knew that they have an aging roster that's always going to have someone with arthritis or tendonitis or whatever you want to call it, right? Because it's an older roster. Melo's been out the last couple of weeks, but for the most part, they're as close to healthy as they're going to get. And they just can't seem, that roster's just janky. I'm shocked they made no moves, but I'm not. I'm shocked they made no moves as in I thought they would have tried to do something to shake the roster up. But why I'm not shocked is because they really have no assets to move. Like who's doing business with them? What are you going to take Westbrook? You're going to take, you know what I mean? Who are you going to take from that roster? They gave up a lot of their good assets, literally walked out to other teams and signed Caruso and whatnot. So, you know, I think Kuzma was decent. So, and he's having a great year individually. Then you factor in, I mean, they've been very bad to watch. It's a hard basketball to watch. And they play Golden State a little bit later today after we stop recording. They could go and win that game. That's how helter-skelter they are. And then their season, I think it's back on track. But you factor that in now. I don't know if you saw Russell Westbrook's comments about why he's not playing as well, because he said, well, I'm not used to not playing minutes, and when I sit on the bench, my back tightens up. So now I'm injured. Which is the most passive-aggressive shit ever. It's like, dude, unless I'm playing more than 30, I'm not going to play well for you because my back tightens up, so I might as well just sit out. And then you top this whole cherry off, Pro. Now, I thought this was an Onion article. I thought this was fake. I actually reposted it a couple of days ago laughing about it because I thought it was someone just did a Babylon Bee type Photoshop. But Jeannie Bust.
No. Wait a minute. That message you sent in the group chat today, that was real?
Well, it's on Boardroom.
I didn't even read it. I mean, I read it, but I've never heard of it. I thought you were just fucking with me. Are you serious? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Read it.
I'm pretty sure it's real. Like that's my point. I mean,
go ahead, let people know about it. I'm sorry.
Unless Boardroom's a piss take of a social media, I don't think it is because they promote TV shows and movies and stuff. But for those not familiar, Jeannie Buss to executive produce a 10-episode workplace comedy series based on the Lakers front office.
Oh my God.
I mean, do we need to say anything else? Like, it's like, I read that because when I saw it as a screenshot, so I thought someone had actually, you know, just screenshot it, but then it's actually shown up on a pretty reputable website. But anyway, let us know your thoughts on the Lakers, bro.
Bogues, I mean, come on. Like, it's been all year. Like, they're just not good enough. They're just not structured enough. They didn't build the team good enough to where it's going to be a winning entity. They hold the ball, ISO. They can't guard anybody. LeBron's at an all-time high in some respects, right? And he can't even do it. Like, they just don't play well together. There's no life. They could only, like I said this about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I didn't think they were going to be in the top 10. If Sacramento goes on a roll after this trade with Sabonis, they might be able to knock the Lakers out of 10, but I don't think so. But they just don't have any life. They don't seem like they're having fun. They can't beat anybody good for the most part. Like, they can only beat those bottom tier teams. The mid-level teams they could sort of compete with a little bit, and that's it. And I just don't. There's no life in this team. They got no chance as far as competing. They will not get out of the play-in round if they even make it. And as far as from years to come, I don't see where the influx of talent is going to come. You're way over the cap with those 3 guys. That's not going away anytime soon. You don't have any young assets. The only young asset you could have traded to get Lowry, you wanted to keep because you thought he was Oscar fucking Robertson and Taylor Howard Tucker. Now you can't give him away. They offered him in a first round pick to Boston for Josh fucking Richardson, which is crazy to me. Which you could have had Kyle Lowry for this kid. You could have had, Buddy Hield for this kid, but you held it up because you thought he was going to be this great player, and he's not. And it's just, I don't see where they go. I agree with you. I don't see where this fucking gravy train's headed.
Yeah, it doesn't have long left. I don't think it does. And I will watch that comedy series for an episode or two just to see if it might be reality TV, Pro. It might not even be a series.
Well, it's been reality TV for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I mean, Davis looks disinterested through portions of games. Their role players, some nights have a role that they know what their role is, and some nights they don't. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm lost for words. I thought they'd at least be somewhat competitive with a fiery Mean Street competitiveness. All right, they don't have the shooting and all that, but I thought they'd at least try to jab back. But it's like when they get hit, they just falter, and it's just ugly to watch. I mean, I probably might disagree with you that I think if they get in the plane, I think there's so much incentive for them to get through. I think in one game they might pull it off, and we all know the Lakers are a golden child for being in the playoffs, so that could work in their favor. But I don't think they deserve to be there, to be honest with you. I think they're, for that roster's a mess, and I'm just I don't know where to from here for the Lakers. They just it has been hilarious to watch, and yeah, I mean, I just continue to scratch my head at and the problem is they're on TV a lot, so you have to watch them. You have to watch them because they're on TV, at least in Australia on ESPN and whatnot. They're a lot of games are in LA, so we have to deal with watching that bullshit. But let's move on to the trades. So there's a lot of trades to get through. We're not going to break them all down in depth. I thought we'd just go through all of them really quickly, and then we'll get stuck into maybe two or three of them. But from the last trade, it was San Antonio acquires Goran Dragic, first round pick for 2022, which is top 14 protected, 23 top 13 protected, and that turns to 2 second round picks if it doesn't eventuate. That was for Thaddeus Young and Drew Eubanks. That's a good one for our boy Jock to an extent, because that was a guy that's playing in his position in Drew. But you have to remember Zach Collins is back from injury and they invested a lot of money in him. So I'm not sure that Jock will get a lot of those minutes that he deserves. I think he deserves to be in the rotation, but I think now with Collins coming off the bench, he's pipped Jock. So that was just an interesting one to note there. Pro, any thoughts on that one?
Not much. I mean, it was just sort of they had a shed salary, not shed salary, but they just had to shed players in their roster. They're not going anywhere as a team, San Antonio, and they get Dragic, who didn't play a minute for Toronto. Toronto gets a couple of players. They cut Eubanks right away. I don't know what they're going to do with Thad Young. I mean, he's definitely could help you, but it was one of those trades that sort of rearranges the deck chairs of the Titanic. Really doesn't matter. Dragic gets to play a few minutes for San Antonio, and as a backup ball handler and things. So yeah, it's one of those just nothing deals, All
right, next one, pretty standard. Phoenix acquires Aaron Holiday. Washington acquires a bucket of cash, so nothing to discuss there really. Boston acquires 2023 second round pick, which is top 55 protected for our guy Bol to Orlando and PJ Dozier, and a 2028 second round pick and cash consideration. So this is just obviously salary cap smoothing for both teams. But your guy Bol's in Orlando. He might get a chance next to Mo Bamba.
Yeah, that'll be Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson all over again. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, actually.
Now, this one was interesting. Okay, so Boston acquires Daniel Theis, who was in Boston many years ago, for Dennis Schroeder, Enes Kanter, Freedom, and Bruno Fernando. So Boston not happy with Schroeder's role, and obviously they got Derek White as well, which we mentioned earlier. This could be it for Enes Kanter, Freedom, I think. I don't know if Houston keeps him around, what they do there, but he could be done after that. I'm not even sure if they've waived him already, but bringing Theis back in when they had a chance to sign him back in the day, pretty interesting, Pro.
Yeah, they like him. They really like Theis, and they're happy to have him. I think they wanted Schroeder out, and just because I think they just got tired of it. And then Kanter, they really weren't using him, so I don't think that Fenerbahce from Turkey is going to be knocking down his door to play anytime soon. But, and then Fernando was never used. So yeah, it was, again, one of those nothing deals. Like it just sort of they even out financially, and then Theis is a player they can use just because of all the players they traded out. They needed the roster spots. They actually had 5 open spots at one time. So I mean, he's a big guy that they trust, and he's been around, and he's a great guy. So it's good for them.
And he'll play for him. Horford's aging, so they get another stretch 5 that can shoot the 3-ball a little bit. So, and he fits in well with their system and their organisation. So, all right, this one was an interesting one. It came out of nowhere. Dallas acquires Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans for our guy, Kristaps Porzingis. We've discussed him at length numerous different times, and they also threw in a 2022 second-round pick. He's protected to Washington. Did you have any sniff of this living in Dallas, Pro?
I didn't. I got a call the night before and said that they were shopping him, and I was like, "Get the fuck out of here!" To where? Like, who's taking the contract? And then my dumbass, like, every contract in this league for the most part is tradable. You can never say any contract's untradeable. I just didn't think they were going to get anything for him. And they ended up making this deal the next day. And I didn't really know any particulars. I didn't know team. I didn't know whatever. But they said that they were really actively looking to, make this move. So I had no idea. I really didn't think it was going to get done. I just thought it was just sort of like, bad information. But it ended up being, a deal.
Like for like, who wins this one, do you think? You think Washington getting Porzingis? He can be the man on that team a little bit? Or, do you think the role, like Dinwiddie, another ball handler, can put Luka off the ball a little bit if you want to, or when he's on the bench, you put it in Dinwiddie's hands a little bit, and then Bertans, really good 3-point shooter, overpaid for the most part, but a really, really, really good ratchet on him. Team for team, like for like, who wins?
I think it's a tie. I really do, just because, all right, I'm not going to sit on the fence. I think Dallas wins because Porzingis can't stay healthy. Like, I think Porzingis is a good player. I think that he got misused last year, sitting him in the corner. We talked about that. I think he could be effective for you because he could score. He could score in the post. You could pick and pop him. He's not a great shooter, but he's an okay shooter. Really good mid-range player. Could make a 3 once in a while. Athlete, could run. The problem is he can't stay healthy. They play better with Luka just handling the ball most of the time, and either him or Brunson, and they don't have another guy that really holds the ball. And I think that they get Dinwiddie and Bertans. It's just 2 players that, look, they need somebody because of Hardaway's out. They got another guy that could come off the bench or start. They could put, I think Dinwiddie's going to come off the bench, but like he's another guy who could score. He could handle the ball. He could do some things. Bertans can shoot. Funny, like he had a pretty good shooting career in San Antonio. He hasn't really gotten it going since he's been in Washington. But I think they're 2 good players. The problem here for Dallas is they got to take on the salary. They don't really get off the money of Porzingis. And I think they end up paying out a little bit more money overall in this deal that they would have if they just kept Porzingis. And that's what it just goes to show you, Bogues. And I don't think anybody was against this deal when it just started with Porzingis. I think everybody loved it. I loved it as far as, Dallas not giving up anything and getting Porzingis. And I think that it just, when you sign these deals and they don't end up working out, you're going to have to end up paying the piper to try to get them out of town. And it just doesn't work. It just didn't work. I think they tried. I just think overall, the biggest problem for Porzingis, he just can't stay healthy. And that's a big problem. So I think
if he's healthy, you'd say if he had a healthy career, and you'd probably say Washington wins, right? But yeah, that's a fair one. How much is he going to play in Washington? There was early on in the life of Porzingis and Luka, there was a bit of a battle there for whose team it was. It was pretty obvious, but there was rumors about that. I think that played a part as well. But I think it's a pretty good deal for both teams. But yeah, I agree. If Porzingis stays healthy and can be the player that he was moving towards in New York and whatnot, they win the trade, and that's a gamble that they're willing to take in Washington. But if not, I think Dallas, kind of like you said, risky. I mean, they're losing a bit more money doing this deal. Bertans has what some people perceive as a pretty bad deal, but yeah, we'll watch the space. I think it retools them. I think Dinwiddie was a good move in a way because of the Hardaway Jr. injury. It puts another ball handler out there that can get his own bucket, that can create for others. So I think when Luke is off the floor, because I know they have Brunson, but they do struggle at times with Luke off the floor to create and score with that balance.
Yeah, and they might lose Brunson in free agency. I don't think they will, but there's a chance they could lose Brunson, and at least they have Dinwiddie, and they still get Hardaway.
Policy,
yeah, and maybe they get rid of Hardaway at some point, but if they lose Brunson, at least you have Dinwiddie and Hardaway. If Brunson stays, I look to them to try to get rid of Hardaway's contract. I think he's got one more year after this one. And I think Bradley Beal is going to end up being the next guy to force his way out of town. So at least if they could keep Porzingis healthy, they get a guy who's a good third option on a team that at least they have on their roster for at least another year, and then his contract ends up going to be an expiring, so they could deal him if they want to. But if they could keep him healthy, he's a good 19-8 kind of guy. Could block a shot here and there. Not a bad player if you can keep him healthy.
Shit, he'll be number one option if Beal leaves, wouldn't he? What, you got Kuzma ahead of him?
Oh, no. I'm just saying in general, he's like on a really good team. He's like a third option. Oh, no, he'll be number one for sure. He'll be their first option.
Yep. All right, so Washington also had moved Montrezl Harrell to Charlotte, and they received Ishmael Smith, Vernon Carey Jr., a 23 second-round pick, which is protected, but this was just a interesting one because they were just trying to get off Montrez at all costs. I guess they thought they'd be a potential fringe playoff team. They probably still are, but I mean, I thought Harrell was good for him in stages, but it seems like he's starting to rub a lot of teams the wrong way with the kind of his antics and probably locker room. But can help Charlotte. Gives them a nice energy boost off the bench. He had a good first game for him and brought some energy for him, and that's what he does. Just as long as he can keep the mentals in check, I think decent deal for Charlotte. Helps their younger guys. You just hope he's not the wrong veteran for that locker room pro.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he definitely helps Charlotte for sure. What they're trying to do, get a tough guy who's got a little bit of skill to him, toughness, and can roll to the basket and give him some decent play. But you're right, he's had a reputation of not being the greatest team guy and locker room guy. But hey, look, they got what they got, and see if they could sort of get it to work.
No doubt. All right, we spoke about Derek White briefly. So Boston got Derek White from San Antonio. Now they gave up a lot. There's a lot in this trade, I guess you'd say. Josh Richardson, 2022 first-round pick, top 4 protected. 2022, then it goes to 2023, which is top 4 protected and conveys to a 23rd second-round pick, Romeo Langford, and a 2028 first-round pick. So top 1 protected. San Antonio have right to swap. So they got back a lot draft-wise and long-term-wise, and this goes back into your mantra of you think that the Spurs are all-in rebuild at this point. They're really going draft heavy the next couple of years, and Boston also gets a very good player. I think an upgrade on Schroeder consistency-wise with Derek White. Thoughts?
I totally agree. I think San Antonio is just trying to shed salary, and I think that they signed White. They liked him. He's a good young player, but they're really not going anywhere as a team right now. They're not even in the play-in. They've obviously got DeJounte Murray, who's is a good player, all-star, but they don't really have other pieces to put around him. They got Keldon Johnson, who's decent, but they don't really have other players. They're not really competing for playoff spots, and I don't think there's a huge bright future with their young core like they usually had, where they would just keep on rearranging players when they had Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, Kawhi. They don't really have that player anymore that they could build around and sort of get more assets to put around them. So I don't, and they're not bad enough where they're going to be a top 2 pick kind of team where they can get this great player through draft. So I like this deal for Boston. I think they don't really give up much except that first round pick. They're all in, they didn't really give up much. Josh Richardson would have been an expiring contract. They would have got rid of anyway. Romeo Langford hasn't done anything. He averaged 4 points a game. I think he better brush up on his Rosetta Stone in Italian and Spanish, because I think he'll be needed in the next couple of years. I don't think he'll be in the NBA much longer. And I think it's a good deal for Boston.
Agree. Get a good young talent. Indiana, they acquired Jalen Smith. This was an interesting one. They got off him, obviously, with more, not a whole lot of minutes there, I guess, in Phoenix, but they got off him. They moved Jalen Smith in a 2022 second-round pick and they gave up Torrey Craig. Now, this is obviously an all-in push for a championship. They see Torrey Craig as someone who plays a vital role for him, has been there before, familiar, they know what he's like. Actually played in the NBL a number of years ago as well, and by all accounts of people I've spoken to, they loved him as a teammate, as an import here. So I think it's a nice little tool up, not a big name or anything like that, but a nice little role player for Phoenix to continue their push to try and get that elusive championship, bro.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. It was a decent trade. It wasn't any big time players or anything, but I think it was Indiana gets an extra pick out of it. They're obviously like trying to change their sort of deal and trying to acquire picks and try to acquire assets to make moves later. It's not a huge deal with this pick, but hey, they acquire a second, and Jalen Smith is a decent player, and Torrey Craig is good for Phoenix. So yeah, like I said, it's one of those rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic. It's not a huge deal type of moves, but it's a decent deal.
4-team trade: Detroit, Milwaukee, Sacramento, Los Angeles Clippers. So Detroit acquires Marvin Bagley. It was no secret that he was unhappy in Sac, and he's got out of there. Milwaukee acquires a 23 second-round pick, a 24 second-round pick, which is Sac's cash considerations, and Serge Ibaka. That is an interesting one in itself because Brook Lopez still is not back. Serge is somewhat healthy now and playing, provides a stretch five for him that can defend the rim, which is what Milwaukee likes next to Giannis, especially in stretches of games, someone that can shoot the three ball and provide defensively. So decent move for Milwaukee as far as that goes. The Clippers acquire Vanja Marinkovic, Rodney Hood, and Semi Ojeleye. Don't know much about Marinkovic, but the other two, not too bad. Rodney Hood, man, that's a story in itself. Going from a very vital role and great player in Utah to just can't find a home, which is interesting. Sacramento acquires Trey Lyles, Josh Jackson, DiVincenzo, and David Michanu. Don't know much about him, but really a lot of the biggest name in that is Marvin Bagley and Serge Ibaka, obviously, but Marvin Bagley is the big name in all of that. Detroit gets a little bit younger again with another inexperienced player, so they're trying to build a young core there. It'd be interesting to see how he goes. But anything pressing from that lot, Pro?
No, not really. I mean, I think that Bagley gets a new home and try to rekindle his career. I think Detroit just said, hey, look, we're at the stage where we're not good. We're one of the worst teams in the league. There'll be minutes for him. See what we got. We'll kick the tires, see if it's worth anything. They didn't lose anything in their trade. I think that the Clippers don't really get anything except, I've heard that they had some issues with Ibaka behind the scenes, just sort of high maintenance and, frustration through the injury stuff. And so they don't really get a lot in it. I don't think many of those players are going to help them. I think they're building for the future anyway. And then Sacramento, the only guy that I really like, I used to like Trey Lyles. I don't know what really happened to him, but Dante DiVincenzo, the big ragu, they called him in Milwaukee. I like him. He's actually a pretty good player, good defender, solid player, knows how to play, got some juice, good ball handler.
Heard a fair bit there, all right? He's had some injury battles, yeah?
Who's that?
He's had some injury issues.
He has. Yeah, he has. But hey, look, for Sacramento, the deals they've made, obviously the big one, Sabonis. They need guards. They got 27 fucking centers. But it's good to have a guard that could actually play if they could keep him healthy. Josh Jackson, look, he's bounced around from his Phoenix days. I've heard he's had a lot better career as far as being a pro. I don't really expect him to stay, but maybe he does. But I think the big ragu was probably the one player that Zach wanted in this. And look, Milwaukee gets those back surgeries. You know how those back issues are, Bogues. They're really tricky. So at least they get a little bit of insurance and they could play Ibaka. I like Lopez better. I think he's got more in the tank, but you just never know with that stuff.
Decent insurance policy, though.
For sure.
He's been on a championship team too, so hopefully he can provide a bit of that stability for him. All right, Cleveland acquires Karis LeVert, 2022 second-round pick, which is a Miami pick, and Indiana acquires Ricky Rubio, who is obviously out for the season. This is a straight salary shed and a bunch of picks, 22 first-round pick, 22 second-round pick, and 27 second-round pick. So Indiana acquires some picks in the draft coming into this offseason, and Cleveland acquires a legit, scoring, creating threat, and he had a great impact in his first game already, made some big buckets for him. So I think a decent pickup for Cleveland. They've got enough young pieces where I thought they could bring in another guy to help him with some ball handling duties, Pro.
I really like this for Cleveland for sure. I like it for Indiana a little bit as well. I mean, I don't know what Rubio's going to do if he could, I don't know even how much he'll play next year. He's expiring anyway. I don't really expect them to re-sign him. They're trying to go younger there. They get a pick out of it, even though it's not a lottery pick. It's going to be a non-lottery, it's a protected pick and a couple of seconds out of it. But LeVert really adds another scorer, another ball handler that Cleveland can use. They've been very good this year. They could challenge to get to a conference final if they do everything right. I don't know if they'll get there, but maybe they can win a round. But I think they've done a great job there. They just add another weapon. They didn't really look. They lost Rubio for the year. He was dead weight as far as on the cap. You might as well turn him into something. And then Indiana was trying to just get off salary. They were trying to get off players and trying to go younger and acquire picks. I think it's good for both sides.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those ones you look at where you're like, hey, this kind of makes sense for both teams. So that doesn't happen too often in NBA trade world, but good on those two teams. Then we move on to Indiana again. Indiana acquires Tyrese Halliburton. Now, this was controversial. Buddy Hield, Tristan Thompson. Sacramento acquires Sabonis, as you just said, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, and a 23 second-round pick. Nobody had Halliburton on the hot seat to get moved. Very, very interesting. It was rumored to be, potentially Fox, potentially someone else, but a lot of people speak very highly of this kid around the league. And what is going on, Pro? Have you heard something that someone out there doesn't know? Because he seems like he'd be a good piece to somewhat keep around.
Yeah, the people that I talked to that sort of knew what was going on with the deal is, look, they liked Halliburton a lot. There was no problem at all, but they needed him. As far as where they've been in the last few years, like the last fucking decade, let's be honest, but they've been a losing team. It hasn't worked. They had to just change things up, and they wanted to put a big man that could really play. That's an all-star player. They wanted an all-star period with Fox, and to put those two guys together. And that's what they did. And they liked Halliburton. They really did. They thought he could have been an all-star. He could shoot. He could do a lot. He could handle the ball, but not a great defender, but he's a good player. I just think that from what I've heard, they wanted to acquire an all-star. They wanted to win the press conference. They wanted to at least make a splash, change things up a little bit. I heard Buddy Hield was a pain in the ass. He didn't like his role, so they wanted to deal him out of town anyway. But they really like Sabonis, and as you saw what he did the other night, I think everybody averages a triple fucking double when they get traded to their new team. I think everybody, the first game you play with the new team, you win the game and you have a triple fucking double. I've never seen a guy lose after getting traded. But anyway, I think he's good. I think he's good for them. He changes it up. He's a solid player, solid vet. Now he's older. Halliburton, he's got this big contract, not a huge contract, but he's got a decent one, $18.5 million. Halliburton's still on his rookie deal. So Indiana now sheds some salary with this, I believe, although they took on Buddy Hield.
But he was on 22.
Yeah, $22 million. But they, with Carlisle.
They lose Tristan, though. Tristan expires, right?
Yeah, they expires, right. But with Carlisle, look, he's a big-time offensive coach. He needs shooting. They didn't have shooting. They played two centers at once with Turner and Sabonis. You give Carlisle shooting and space the floor, and they still don't have great players in their team. But look, Halliburton's a young guy. They got under his rookie deal. They could have long term if they want. He'll be a restricted free agent. They could control the whole deal with him. Keep him for another 4 years on a new extension or 5 years on an extension. Look, I understand why Sack did it. I don't think that Halliburton's, I don't think he's Magic fucking Johnson or anything, but he's a good player. He's a good young player. But Sacramento's going nowhere. The circle and the fucking drain. They need to do something. And I'm not in love with it, but Sabonis is a really good player. He's a professional. He's tough. I don't know how much of a winner Fox is, but at least you got a guy with them. They still got Harrison Barnes. They still got a couple of players. Mitchell, the young kid. But I don't everybody was killing this deal, folks. I don't think it was terrible.
I guess it's the unknown. It's the unknown of not knowing what Halliburton's going to be yet, because it's very, very early in his career and it's very, very early in his journey. So I think the people are worried that are killing Sack for it, what if in 2 years he's, an all-star or whatever, right? I think that's probably, you've gone for a known all-star commodity to someone who could be even better than that down the track. And that's the risks GMs and organizations and owners take and coaches take, is like, we want a bit more stability now, and we're going to risk that this guy is not as good as, he's going to be, right? And that's just the reality of the NBA. But, Sabonis definitely provides them with a presence in the paint. I think he'll fit in very, very well in that pick and roll with De'Aaron Fox. Like, Sabonis is very, very, very good with guards that can come downhill at the same time and kind of that short half roll and shooting those little flip shots and getting in the paint. I think he does a very, very good job, very, very underrated in that skill, and that's where he gets a lot of his buckets. So I think it's good, and I know Justin Holiday real well, great teammate. I think they can use another guy like that next to, he's really good friends with Harrison Barnes, to stabilize that locker room with some good, cool heads. And I think it's good for Sack. As long as Halliburton doesn't end up being a top 15, top 20 in 3 or 4 years' time, because then they're going to cop even more shit looking back. But they have to do something. They're in that position, like you said, I'd say almost 2 decades of just mediocrity almost. So they need to get on with it. They need to get that new arena filled up and people cheering and chanting. All right, so Portland was pretty busy. We touched on, I don't think we hit this. This happened like a day after we dropped our pod last week. But first of all, they acquired a 2026 second-round pick from New Orleans, Josh Hart, Nickel Alexander-Walker, Thomas Satoransky, 27 second-round pick, 22 first-round pick, New Orleans pick, top 4, and Didi Lazada, former Sydney King, for Tony Snell. I think he hasn't missed a free throw in 5 years. Probably only shot 4 of them, but that's a story for another day. Larry Nance Jr. and CJ McCollum to New Orleans. So New Orleans shores up a bit of an offensive presence there with McCollum. Larry Nance Jr., a very good intangibles guy, can do a lot of different things for you and be kind of that active defender, offensive rebounds, loose balls that every team needs. And Tony Snell, a really good feed set 3-point shooter. And Portland just trying to get away from CJ and salary. Really, it's not so much they didn't want CJ. They're in a point where, I wouldn't be surprised if Dame's out of there in the off season. They got to blow that thing up. They got to rebuild. So that segued then into our guy Joe Ingles a day later. So Elijah Hughes and Joe Ingles in a 22 second round pick go to Portland. San Antonio get Satoransky, who was by New Orleans the day before, a 27 second round pick. And Utah acquire Nickel Alexander-Walker and Juan Herman Gomez. What are your thoughts around all that? I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. I know Joe was pretty disappointed. He did make comment when he first did his knee that, if Utah wants to move me, I'm all for it, so they can try to make a push with someone that's actually healthy and but then he also said that once it happened, it hurt because it actually happened. He didn't think it was going to happen that quickly, and they got him out of there quick after that injury. And I think it always hurts, no matter how tough you talk or how much you say, I hope the team makes the right decision for the team. Whenever you get that call, it sucks. And he's obviously a free agent. I'm not sure if he even reports to Portland or how that all works or what those conversations are like. There are rumors that they are in contact with him and want him to be around that young group and be that veteran for him. But whether he does his rehab there is yet to be seen. But what do you think about Portland's moves, and do you think this pushes New Orleans out of a play-in potentially to fringe playoff?
Yeah, I think right now they're 10, if I'm not mistaken. I got to check on it, but I mean, I think it definitely moves them into, once McCollum gets his legs under him and, because he's coming back from that collapse lung anyway, so he's still trying to work his way in. I think Larry Nance is out for the year and Snell hasn't really played. I think it helps New Orleans a lot. I think it just gets another player, they could put with Zion, and I think that would be a nice little group if Zion could ever get healthy, knock on wood. But I think with Portland, I think they're going to end up signing Dame Lillard, Bogues, to that Supermax contract. I really do.
Who's that?
I think for him, he's going to get huge money. For them, they get a guy that, look, I've heard that they're going to sell the team. I've heard that the Paul Allen's widow is going to sell the team. It's in a trust. I think he's going to sell it. They're going to sell it. I think that I agree it's going to be a bad contract for them because they can't win. But for them, too, if you're trying to sell the team and you have absolutely nothing to sell, like as far as like no assets on your roster, I think that they're going to look at $60 million or whatever. He's still pretty young. And I think that you sign him. Look, like I said, they're not going to win games. it's going to be too hard. But if they shed enough salary, I think players are going to want to play with them. So I think you might be able to get anybody. The problem, Bogues, is that there's no real free agents out there. There's not going to be any great free agents that you could sign anyway. So it would be interesting what they do. But I think they're going to end up signing Dame Lillard, in my opinion. The moves that they made, whatever, like a lot of people gave him shit because they really, they liked Alexander Walker that they got from New Orleans, and then ended up basically dealing him for Joe Ingles, which is basically an expired contract. Elijah Hughes is just an average player, and then they get that second round pick. And then for Utah, I really like it for them because they acquired two good players that could sort of help them off the bench, and two pretty young guys. And then I don't know what San Antonio is going to do with Satoransky, but and then that second round pick. But I do think Bogues. I really do think that Dame Lillard will end up in Portland. I do.
Who stay long term. Yeah, well, it makes sense if they're selling the team, they better have an asset to sell it with. So that makes total sense. If those are not familiar, if you ever want to go to sell a team, you want to at least have a max or a superstar or a name to be able to sell to someone else buying that team. So that makes total sense. So we'll watch that space. And Miami acquired basically a second-round pick for KZ Okpala, which really is no offense to him or them, but really a nothing deal. But I want to leave this one till last. Philadelphia 76ers, worst-kept secret. It actually happened. James Harden and Paul Millsap are going to Philly. Brooklyn has acquired Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, a 22 first-round pick, unprotected right to defer until 23, and a 27 first-round pick, which is top 8 protected. 28 top 8 protected conveys to a 29 second-round picks and $2 million if not used. So really, really interesting that they gave up Seth as well in this one. I think Brooklyn did okay. I mean, I know James is, you have him as top 10, top 15. Millsap, I don't doubt he plays that much for Philly, but at least gives them a backup, probably more to the 5 spot for losing Drummond. They lost a big, so at least they got a big in return. But yeah, the Seth one helps Brooklyn, I think, providing more shooting around KD if KD gets healthy, and Kyrie if he can play home games. So they've got a lot of ifs on that squad. But what are your thoughts around it? Do you think there's a winner in this trade?
I think they both won, but here's my thought on it. I thought Brooklyn completely blinked. I thought that, look, Bogues, like, this fucking league is crazy. Everybody's jumping ship. Right? Look, you don't really know. We don't really know because we're not there. We didn't deal with James Harden all year. We don't know how happy or not happy he was to be there. All I do know is this. On January 21st, okay, a few weeks back, they're 29-16. Even with the whole Kyrie thing, I think he just came back. He could play, he can't play in Brooklyn, but he could play most other places. 29-16. Doing really well. First in the East. No one was talking about there being a fucking problem. You got all these people who read fucking John Gordon books and stuff, and, Mr. when adversity hits, we got culture and this and that. And then you get a problem with Durant getting hurt. Harden starts getting a little disgruntled. Irving, was in and out, and then you lose 9 and 10 in a row. And now you got to make a trade. My thing is, and I talked about it last week in the pod, Philly needed them on this. They needed them. I don't understand why they didn't just go the whole year, play this out. Durant comes back in a few weeks after All-Star break. He'll be back, and play this out. They had a great chance, even with Irving. That whole mask mandate thing is going to be over. Like either playoff time or next year, it's going to be over. Why not try to make a run for the playoffs, run to the championship, try to keep this guy happy? And if it doesn't work, that same trade, in my opinion, would still be there. Like
even with him expiring.
Well, he's got the option. He's got the player option.
So he opts out. He can just walk then to Philly, can't he?
He could walk, but Philly can't acquire him through free agency. So the only two things that you can do, basically, is say, work it out this way. Either say, look, James, let's roll it back one this year. If it doesn't work, you want to be out, we'll trade you to Philly. All right, we'll trade you to Philly. Or like you could trade him, or you could trade him to like, yeah, I mean, that same trade's going to be there. Daryl Morey would give up anything in his life for that guy. I mean, James Harden is his Michael Jordan. It's his LeBron James. It's his, it's his Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You name the player, Kobe Bryant. That's his guy. He would do anything to acquire him. Now, I like the fact that Brooklyn got Curry and, Curry, Drummond's okay, and they got some picks out of it. They got more than you thought they were going to get. I would have held out for Thibault, and I would have held out for Maxey. I would have held out for those two guys. I wouldn't have taken the picks. I would have been hard on it because Philly needs this to work. Now, kudos to for Daryl Morey. He held out for what he wanted, and he didn't waver. He didn't care about clutch sports or anything else. Dealing Ben Simmons when he wanted to deal him. He was going to keep him and let him rot there until he got James Harden. He didn't give a fuck. And he's a gangster. He is a complete fucking gangster because he, everywhere, when he was in Houston, he went after superstars. I'm not saying he's a perfect GM. He's never been in the finals and all that, but he's gone off to superstars every step of the way, getting James Harden, going after Pau Gasol and Carmelo Anthony when they were still in their prime, almost getting those guys, and then going after all, getting Dwight Howard and doing all that. That guy goes after what he wants to. He didn't give up the farm to get this kid. He got James Harden. He deals Simmons, who didn't want to be there. And then Seth Curry, who's a shooter. He's good. And those two picks that aren't really worth anything. And then Drummond, obviously, he's big, but not that big. And he gets to put two superstars together and see what they can do with them. He's got a good coach. He's got his two guys that he wants. And look, the deal itself, Bogues, is another black mark for the league. It's just like James Harden, no one really knew he wasn't happy until a week ago anyway. But the Ben
Simmons that's what's hilarious about it.
It's fucking hilarious. And we'll talk about the other stuff I know you want to talk about with both those guys. But both those guys didn't want to be there, so you both win. Brooklyn gets a young kid. I don't trust the kid, but he is a talent. He's a big-time talent. He could put with Durant. If Irving's there long term, they got him. And then they got a couple other decent pieces there, and they could still make a run. I still think, Bogues, that Brooklyn blinked, and I would have held this thing together because look, 29-16 3 weeks ago, everybody was talking them or Milwaukee, for representing the East in the championship. There was no problem. Yeah, the Irving thing was a pain in the ass, but there was no problem even with that Irving deal going on. And now all of a sudden, because there's a little bit of a fucking problem, and they lost a few games in a row, 10 in a row, it's not great, but you can't salvage it with Durant coming back and him, and then Irving's probably going to play the playoffs, if not play a full year next year. And then you gave up the whole fucking franchise anyway to get these three guys. That was your whole thing a year ago, 2 years ago, when you were getting this team together with Durant, Irving, Harden, and you gave up Allen, you gave up LeVert, you gave up, Dinwiddie, you gave up all that to get these three guys together, and now one guy's unhappy. This is why the league is fucking crazy, and that's the blueprint of the league, Bogues. If you want to get traded to a certain place and you're a superstar, have it out there that I'm not going to re-sign with anybody else except this team. So go ahead, trade all your assets to get me because I don't give a fuck. I am going where I want to go. And that's just how the league is. And that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And I guess the reports were that James Harden literally just went cold on everyone, stopped talking to guys. That's what was reported. They knew something was wrong because it was the passive aggressiveness of not engaging with teammates and not talking to KD or Kyrie and all that kind of stuff. So that's the only reason they knew something was wrong and why these deals started being discussed a little bit more. But yeah, it just sucks. It's not great for the optics of it. You don't blame James Harden to an extent because he structured his contracts in a way where he has all the leverage. It seems like every couple of years he has all the leverage. And, I don't condone what he did in Houston. I don't condone what he's done here, but he's somewhat playing by the rules. The NBA is appeasing this and allowing this to continue to happen. It's the same as what we said on the call-in a couple of hours ago where, the Ben Simmons thing, it's like he signed a 5-year deal and the first year he wants out, regardless of the circumstances that ensued about, his teammates turning their back on him, whatever. It's a very slippery slope, and it will turn into there'll be rule changes. I don't know what they are. There will be something, rest assured. But touching on Ben Simmons, how much longer will he be out for mental health, bro?
About 30 more minutes until his physical comes in. I think that's a complete laughable fucking joke, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, we're not, and look, to be clear for all the bedwetters that will get mad, we're not condoning, railing on people that have mental health. Pro's questioning whether that was just used as an excuse to get him out, but he's in a tough spot now because, you got to set the over-under on a couple of weeks at least, because you don't want to come back tomorrow because everyone's going to know that, now you're a liar as well. And you don't want to wait too long before you start playing again because you haven't played in so long. So he's put himself in a bit of a corner there, but yeah.
I don't think he does. I think that everybody forgets, Bogues. I think everybody forgets. All they care about is getting him on the court. And no one's going to remember that he had mental health issues. That's all they want to do is get him on the court. Look, they use it as a tool to get him out of there, to make him feel bad for him and have the whole media sort of that whole deal just try to swing their way. They did that. It didn't work because they didn't really deal him. They dealt him for other reasons because they got their guy. But no one's going to care that he lied about this. No one's going to care. They're just going to say, hey, Ben Simmons is going to play. And that's all they care about. No one's going to care about that.
You got to be careful because, we know a lot of average people out there think that athletes and celebrities use mental health. It's like, hey, I got caught cheating on my wife with, 5 pay for plays. I've got mental health issues. You're just like, it's just, I said something silly. I've got mental health issues. So we got to be real careful because it takes away from people that truly have problems, right? People that truly need help, and then they're scared to come out because now it's been belittled of like, yeah, right, you do, like just like everyone else. So it's a slippery slope. I think I'm going to be interested to see how that all goes. Now, one thing I'll say is I think for him to play a lot there and to be the most useful, I think he's going to have to buy into playing the 5 for some stretches, Pro. I really do. I think with the way Nash plays, he doesn't like playing big as it is. If you've got everyone healthy on that roster and you've got KD at the 3-4 to create mismatch problems, maybe you put him at the 4. I don't know if you put, first also Bruce Brown, he's now he can't play with Ben in the lineup. So he loses his minutes. His role is going to be diminished severely by getting Ben Simmons. They have Patty and Seth who are going to find huge roles with shooting the ball. But I think for them to be their most successful, Ben's going to play the 5. And he despises playing the forward or the center spot, right? He despises it, hates being called 5, hates being called a 4. He's a point guard or a shooting guard or a small forward, whatever. I think point guard is more of point forward, whatever. But I think he needs to buy into playing the 5. Whether he can do that with this time off and the mental health stuff and maybe refinding himself and his chakra and all that kind of stuff, I think for their best opportunity, those lineups that are, nut crunching time lineups are with him at the 5. That's how I see it. I just don't see, who else you put in there, Claxton or Millsap, right? I think that's the way they have to go with KD healthy. And does he buy into it? I don't know. He really, when I was around him that small amount of time, he despised being called a forward or a center,
Bogues, it would be funny if he comes back and says, I'm not playing. I'm sitting out until this is getting rectified. I'm not playing center. And what if he sits out another game? No, but I'll be honest. Like, I don't think the one good thing about this, and I think when we talked about on the call-in about JaVale McGee, right? When now he had some major adversity with this had to sit out the whole year, half the year with Philly. I don't think he really has a lot of power left and leverage left in, like I told you, like Rick Carlisle once told me in the NBA, it's all about having leverage. I don't think Simmons he's got some leverage because they traded Harden for him, but he's always had this bad perception he has this bad perception as it is. I think he's going to buy in. I really do think he'll be on his best behavior and buy in for at least this season. And then if he's going to turn into a pain in the ass, he'll turn it into it next year, especially if he's got some success, especially if he's got some playoff success. But I think he'll buy in or whatever. And I agree with you. I think he's got to play some 5 just because of the shooting, just because of how Nash likes to play, just because of how that's constructed. I think that he's going to have to play some 5 in some stretches. I do agree with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a no-brainer. And just a matter of whether you buy in. I think their lineups will be tough too. Like, it'd be a tough lineup. They've got enough length to switch 1 through 5 with Ben at the 5 and KD at the 4, and then those 3 guards or 3 shooters. I think that's a really tough lineup to match up with. So it could cause some problems. But does James Harden's hamstring heal on the flight over to Philly?
Yeah, I think that goes down a toilet bowl with the mental illness deal, don't you think? I think they both got traded in the deal. They both got traded in the deal. But no, I don't think. I think it's the same thing. I think
he's good.
I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be good to go.
All right, Philly versus Brooklyn in the playoffs is what every man and his dog will want to see. You don't usually see teams, by the way, that would be competing potentially in the conference finals or a second round trade this late in the season, and you don't see in division teams and conference teams generally. Does Ben play on the road, Pro?
Bogues, I think in the last...
Your answer should be yes.
Bogues,
your answer should be...
The last 30 years, I don't think that a guy that got traded like from a team that has been there long term has played the next game against that team. It's always a mysterious illness, injury, blah, blah, blah. It'll be interesting when they play.
If they play in the playoffs, though, you got what?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the next game. Yeah, so
playoffs.
Playoffs. So who do I have, or does Ben play?
No, does Ben play? Does Ben play on the road?
Hey, I cannot wait. I hope TNT has a cam that just has that old guy with the fucking blackboard in Philly. That what he says to Ben Simmons on that fucking board. That'll be hilarious.
Oh, that's not going to be the worst of it. The worst of it's going to be just the verbals you hear from. Woo. That's going to be a hostile environment. That's going to be bad. Yeah, they're going to have numerous different sport track cameras all around the arena for that one, because that's going to be a hostile environment. So if that happens, I know Ben's probably praying to God that they don't face Philly.
What about Harden in Brooklyn? What about?
Nah.
What do you think? They don't think you think they give a fuck?
Nah. Brooklyn crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
This ain't New York.
I felt the Brooklyn crowd was pretty quiet and tame and fair weather, and they're all Knicks fans that have converted because it's either their close arena or they're still Knicks fan at heart. So I don't think they really have that passion about it. Really, in my opinion, it might have changed since I was there, but it just doesn't seem like it's they'll care too much. They might he'll get booed. Don't get me wrong, but I think that Philly environment is going to be in absolute insanity. So. Hopefully, I want to see it. I hope they play each other in the first round, because the way Brooklyn record is, if KD doesn't come back soon, they might even fall into a play in the way they're going. So they might have to come. Philly ends up being a 1-2-3. You never know. So we'll watch that space. Mark Stein on his Substack, and this is what we've spoken about previously, is quoted as saying, teams out there already. Owners and officials and teams are determined to explore the feasibility of working new salary sanctions into the next CBA to, I guess, deter another highly compensated player from taking Harden's lead and essentially going on strike like he did twice in the last 15 months to force his way to a new team. I mean, we both agree they have to do something. It's a matter of what do they do, but it is going to be an issue. I'm interested to see how Play Association takes to this, because this wasn't even an issue, 2-3 CBAs ago. Now this is some leverage that the Players Union gets to maybe, I'm making this up, make salaries higher, get more BRI. I don't know, but this is another thing now that is on the table. We know, this can't continue this way. It can't continue that you can walk out of a 5-year deal 1 year in for whatever the circumstances, right? But you can just walk out. So they got to do something. I've spoken about at length that a guy like Ben Simmons, who signed a 5-year deal with Philly and he got that bonus, probably 10 to 15% for signing with his home team, maybe he gives that up if he asks for a trade. He shouldn't take that with him then, because he's not with that same team. Maybe there's a 20% penalty. Maybe it goes down with each year you're there. But like I said on the call the back in my day rant was, most guys that sign 5-year deals would at least give it a fair shake for 3 years. And then maybe in the 4th year, they'd ask for a trade if shit was still bad at the club, or they wanted to move on to greener pastures. But this, asking for it in your first and second year of a 5-year deal when you're the max guy, that should be frowned upon. And I'm glad that the league's looking into a pro. But I guess it begs a question for me to you is, what can they do to change it?
Oh, this is as everybody knows, it's a very delicate situation. And I think that what the players are going to bounce back with is, well, what about the teams if they force to play a guy? Like if they don't play a guy. I'm sorry, not forced to play a guy, but they refuse to play somebody. So what do you do with that situation? What do you do with John Wall?
It's much smaller sample size with those, but yeah, it's a fair point. Very fair point. I think it's probably 25, 30% goes that way. The rest goes the other way.
Yeah, I think with these max deals, super max, whatever you want to call them, all these max deals, there should be some type of sort of the league has to get involved where arbitration, like you said, look, they could buy each other out. Like if the player wants out and the team wants him out, they both can turn their key and say, we negotiate a buyout or what have you. But the problem is, and just like we were talking about with like all these teams wanting to acquire Harden or what have you, but they know if they got him, he probably wouldn't resign, opt out, and then leave. So if you lose a guy like this, you acquire him through free agency, trade, what have you, and he leaves like that and wants to leave in the middle of the contract. Like, what's the compensation? And like you said, you could throw back money. It could be 20%. Like negotiate a buyout where it has to be negotiated in the contract already. So if you go to arbitration, it's going to be this, and then the new team, to my opinion, like if I'm okay, so if I'm Brooklyn and Harden just tells me 2 years into the deal I'm out, or a year into the deal I'm out. Like if I'm Brooklyn and I spend all these resources to get him, and then he just wants to walk, well, yeah, I want 20% of the money back, or 30% of the money back, maybe even half the money back. Or the league says, look, he buys out. I don't know what to do because like there's still salary cap implications. He's still on your cap. Does that money just erase? The new team that signs him, I think they got to give you at least 2 to 3 first-round picks, 2 first-round picks and a pick swap at least. Like if it's James Harden and like this guy just wants to leave, and in a way, thank God that Philly came here with a trade, that they could have traded him for something, because he could have walked this year. All of a sudden, like I said, 29-16 a month ago, now he wants to leave and he opts out and you get nothing. A lot of these times they could just walk on these opt-out deals. It's not just going to be simple as a sign and trade. And if it is a sign and trade, it probably won't be a lot anyway you get back. So I think you're going to have to get maybe a buyout, like it's like Europe, like where the player can get out, but he'll owe you $10 million or something like that. So like he's off your books. He gives you 10 million or 15 million, 3 first-round picks and whatever. But I don't know how they're going to really deal with this, because it's really tough, Bogues. Can't really force a guy. The guy could say his back or his hamstring hurts, and that, like it's ugly. It's ugly.
They need to figure something out. They need to, because like I said, most young kids now follow a player rather than a team, but there still are a lot of people that follow teams. It's getting harder and harder to follow because, like I said on the call-in, you're an all-in supporter for, let's say, the Utah Jazz as a prime example, and you're like, I'm going to buy my kid a Donovan Mitchell jersey, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, this kid's only going to be here 3 or 4 or 5 years, and he's going to get out and then go to New York or LA. It's kind of a tough pill to swallow, right? And it'd be, it's nice, the old school mentality of a guy sticks it out for the most part with a team that's a star and he's there 10 years and gives it a fair shake for a championship. But super teams have killed that. And it just, I don't know if that's better for the game or worse. It's debatable either way. And I just don't think that, it's just not fair to these teams that draft the right way, they make the right decision, they invest all the money, and then a guy just gets up and leaves anyway. It kind of sucks. So they got to do something. I don't think there's an easy fix. I think it's going to be a bit of a negotiation. Maybe the trade kickers work both ways, like you said. Maybe if a player can have a trade kicker, so can a team. The moment you come to us and say, I want out, here, cool, sign this document that's saying you want out, 15% comes our way from your total contract. That would change a lot for some players. But the problem is, a guy like Harden, it's like the next team's going to give it straight back to him anyway. So,
Bogues, here's my question to you then. Okay. So say Harden signs a 3-year, $90 million deal with you, right? And in year 1, he wants out.
Yep.
So like, are you like if you're the league and you're playing God here and you can make the rule, would it be that automatically he's bought out? Like he wants to leave and you're like, okay, sign this document. What happens? Does he just get released and he can just go? Do you have to trade him? Like
that's what's tough because then you're limiting your leverage as a team trade. If he says I want to go to Team X, that's what happens here in Australian rules football. These players nominate, I want to be traded, but I only want to go to this team. It's like, well, there goes our leverage. Like we can't get back our best deal because this team knows we have to move in there. So that
was the genius. Yeah,
that's the problem with the Philly thing, right? It's like,
that was the genius of it.
Yeah,
that was the genius of Daryl Morey. Like the guy knew that no other team would trade for him because they know that the guy wouldn't re-sign and he wanted to sign with Philly. So he knew that he was going to get him if it was now or it was 3 months from now or a year from. He was going to get this guy. It was done. And that's, folks, I'm telling you, you can't stop that. You could stop the forcing out of town and not playing sort of thing. You could probably fine guys, take their money back, their game checks for those games, but you're never going to lose the age-old, I have leverage, I'm a superstar. I'm not talking about 190th best player in the league. I'm talking about a top 10 guy. I've got leverage. I'm going to sign with the Lakers only. So you work out a trade with the Lakers or I'm just going to walk. You're fucked.
No, I agree with that. And that's Harden, like I said, pat him on the back and his agent. They structured his contracts perfectly to have that leverage at all times. He's done it twice now. My point is more around the Simmons. It's like you've signed a 5-year deal. Year one, you're like, I want out. They're the ones I'm talking about. Those shorter ones, you can't argue that. I mean, the league can maybe say, okay, if you're a max guy, you can't sign anything less than a 4-year or whatever it is. They might play with that a little bit. I don't know, but it's those other ones, the 5-year, and after a year you want out. They're the ones that there needs to be a hard and fast rule that hurts that player because the reason why I say you got to sign that document saying that you want out is because the last thing you want is a trade to happen and the player says, well, I didn't ask out. I'm not losing that 15% that I'm supposed to pay penalty. So that's what I meant by that document is you formally are asking us you want out on record. So then we'll go to market and try to trade you, whether it be to a certain team or not. But that's my point. It's those guys because, like let's say Donovan Mitchell now signs a 5-year deal and then he's like, I'm giving you guys a year to get this ship right. And they don't. And then he's out next season, right? It doesn't sit well with me. Some people it does. Some people don't give a shit. They're like, I'm supporting the player. He should have every right to go where he wants. And to an extent, yeah, that's what free agency is for. But sometimes you might, we're stuck in this world of like a player's has 3 years left on their deal. They get traded somewhere they don't want to be. Oh, it's the end of the world. It's not. Like you're not in the city you want to be, but you still have a shitload of money. You're still playing NBA basketball. Suck it up for 2 or 3 years and then go sign what you want. That's what's been lost. It's like, no, I want it now. I want to go where I want to go now. Well, you're under contract, dude. Like, and if you want to get out of that contract, there needs to be ramifications that it's not all positive for you just because you're a player. And I think that's where the leverage has gone just too much to the players. I think 50-50 is always where you want to be with everything. At this point, I think it's 80, 85, percent in favor of the players because they, like I said, when's the last time you've heard, John Wall's probably an example, but he's still getting paid. The last example of a player not getting what they wanted in these situations, the Harden situations, you just don't hear it very often. It's generally going, at least in the max guys now, on the other side of the coin with vet min guys, non-guaranteed guys, they all get screwed. So I guess you could argue then maybe it balances out, the league screwing over those low totem pole guys and then the stars screw, the league back. It probably should be the other way around when you consider finances. But I don't know what the hard and fast rule change will be, but it's just good to have this discussion. I'd love to hear what some of you listeners out there think would be a good rule change for that circumstance where a player signs a 5-year deal and wants out after a year. How do we facilitate that? What are the penalties? Should it be allowed, period? Should it be, no, we're going to sit you? What Morey almost did would have been historical in NBA terms where you're sitting a max player and letting him rot and not playing him. That would have been real interesting if that went down that way because that might have changed something, but we didn't get to that point. Next one, Pro. Don't want to touch on this too briefly, but I want to touch this briefly, not too in detail, but LeBron on record is willing to leave the Lakers to play with his son, Bronny. A few things here. Most likely, Bronny's going to be an NBA player, but how do we know he's going to be at the NBA level? That's the first thing. If you're a small market team, do you just go ahead and do this? You sign LeBron and bring Bronny in. You know, you might be a team that hasn't had much success. Like Sacramento, if you weren't going this rebuild route, do you do it if you're a Sacramento? Do you do it if you're New Orleans or someone like that? Get some bums on seats out of the arena. But there's a lot of moving parts for this to happen, and there's no way. Surely the Lakers don't do it pro first and foremost. Surely we can scratch them off the list with all this bullshit going on. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, but surely.
Whoa! What? You're gonna scratch the Lakers off the list
with everything going on?
Come on. Folks, are you serious?
Too much credit.
I mean, come on. This is like the 930th most fucked up thing the Lakers would do this month. Forget about it. That's easy. Yeah, you draft a kid. And I tell you this, too. I will tell you this. There's no way that a Sacramento would draft him and that guy and LeBron would ever go there. And don't look, the kid's a fucking cajillionaire, right? Like if he gets drafted, say 26, right, and he goes to say Sacramento, and Sacramento takes him first round, second round, whatever they take him, then he'll be represented by Clutch. He won't report. He doesn't care. He has all the money in the world. It ain't like he's living check to check. And then until you trade him to the team he wants to go to, no doubt that will happen 1,000%. So I think the Lakers they're gonna break this team up soon anyway. I think within 18 months, I think both those guys are going to be gone. I think LeBron and AD will probably be gone, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I'm just interested to see how this Bronny thing works out because it's racking my brain around it. Like it's a lot of moving parts for that to happen. But if anyone can do it, it'll be LeBron.
They'll force it. Look, Bogues, that's the blueprint about this whole league now, especially with Clutch. They'll sit out. They don't care. Like I said, if this kid was like Josh Giddey, right? I don't know what Josh Giddey was making salary-wise, whatever. He can't really afford to, sit out. He could play wherever, but if they draft you, they got your rights. You can't, I guess you could just play somewhere else. You could play overseas. But, this kid has all the money in the world. He doesn't care. He'd probably rather play video games than pick up anyway. It doesn't matter, until he gets to the new team. But they'll just sit him out. They'll say, look, first of all, he's not going to report to you. Second of all, you'll never get a free agent from me ever. So let's trade him to team X or Y. Let's stop the nonsense, and then we'll be fine. And that's exactly how that thing will work out. So he'll go where LeBron wants him to. If LeBron's still in LA, he'll be in LA. If LeBron wants to go to New York, he'll go to New York. So that's how I see it going.
Yeah, it's fair enough. It's more probably a discussion about the poison that Clutch is in the NBA and these bigger agencies. Even the bigger agencies back in the day didn't do this kind of shit. It's a whole different ball game right now, and that's a podcast series you could probably do with 50 episodes. So, hopefully it doesn't get to that. But the LeBron-Bronny thing will be a first in sports history, pro sports history, I believe, and at least in NBA history. And it'll be interesting to see if that gets pulled off, and if it does, we'll be watching and talking about it. All right, Thibs. Tom Thibodeau, New York Knicks. We spoke about Cam Reddish potentially helping them as a shooter. Anyway, Thibs wasn't a fan, didn't want the Knicks to trade for him. So in reply to that, he has received 4 DNPs, and the rest of his 6.9 minutes have been in garbage time. The reason why I bring this up is if you're Cam Reddish, be careful what you wish for in the NBA, pro. It can be a cold world. He went from a half-decent role in Atlanta, wasn't playing as much as he thought he should have, was playing, to now go on a team that's just as bad, if not worse, record-wise, and not playing at all, pro.
Folks, it's simple. You're either a big-time player or you're not. And if you're not a big-time player, like Cam Reddish is, he's not a big-time player. He's barely sort of, surviving in the league. Like you said a few minutes ago, you put your head down, you work hard, you put your numbers up, you get better as a player, and then you can dictate a little bit more of what you do. Like you're dictating trade now. You're second year in the league. You can't make a shot. What have you done? You haven't had anything of an NBA career. You're just holding on for dear life, and you demand a trade, and then you go to a guy that doesn't want to play you. I've seen these situations, folks. When I was in Boston, when we got Vin Baker, the coach really didn't want him, want to trade for him. He ended up trading for him and never ran a play to him. I'm like, Vin Baker's like a 20-10 guy. We don't run one play to him on the block. Like, it's funny, but he didn't want him. And now it's not that. It wasn't just that. But if you go to every situation in the NBA, there's always something, right? One thing, two things, three things that's fucked up about the situation for a player. At least you know the evils you're dealing with in Atlanta. Like, you know the good and the bad, but you have a role. But now New York's not invested in you. Like, Atlanta was invested in you. They drafted you. They put the work into you. They developed you. Once you start getting traded, I've been down this road 1,000 fucking times, and I've seen it. And I've told players this: when you're at your first place and they draft you and they put money into you, they're gonna really want you to succeed because A, they get you on the cheap. B, like, they want to see a draft pick do well. So they want to see you do well. You go to the next team and you're not really a front runner. You're not a big time player where they really wanted you in the trade, and you were just basically a throw in, a salary dump, whatever you were. You don't know you don't know what's behind door number 2. You know what's behind door number 1. You know the good, the bad, and the ugly. But at least you knew the situation and they invested money into you. Now you go to a coach. That coach, Tibbs, doesn't give a fuck. If he likes you, he loves you. If he doesn't, he doesn't. He won't play you. And the front office does not fuck with him as far as his lineups. He can do whatever he wants. And if he doesn't want to play you, he will not play you.
Yeah, so, just interesting. Careful what you wish for. And I thought a play that probably could have helped them a little bit, but yeah, Tibbs thinks otherwise, and they're starting to play a little bit better. Patrick Beverley never forgets, bro. Did you see this little nice comment he put out? Social media post.
I don't think so.
Well, so I guess back in the day, 2-3 years ago, Beverley and Westbrook used to have their little run-ins, right? Beverley would be up in his grill, picking him up full court. There was that one time where I think he hurt his knee
out, right?
Yeah, before a timeout. And Westbrook was quoted as saying that basically Patrick Beverley fools everybody with all his antics. All he does is run around and trick everyone like he's playing hard, right? So Patrick Beverley put a post out today, a couple of days ago, said, I remember when somebody said all I do is run around and trick y'all. Well, my boy is a real magician this year. Good shit. I like it. I like the banner. They've got, I don't know, I doubt they're friendly, but they've got a real good rivalry going. Obviously, Westbrook's the better player overall, but Beverley's one of those guys that he knows who he is just going to try to get in the guys' heads and niggle, but I thought that was pretty clever. And just to finish on the shenanigans in the NBA, Kevin Porter Jr., Pro, our soup-throwing favorite player out there in Houston, scored a basket for his own team late in the game. I don't know if you saw the highlight of it, but 5 seconds were dribbling down. He grabbed the rebound at the opposition basket or ended up with the ball at the free throw line, turned and pretended to throw it off the ground, to throw it off the backboard to do, I don't know what the hell he was thinking, but throws it off the ground and the ball goes in. And it counted. So he scored for the other team. And yeah, man, I think this kid, like you said, he's very close to just ended up he's one more non-guaranteed away from being out of the league, in my opinion, in the next couple of years. It's just the antics and the shenanigans. And some people might think, what's the big deal? He was just messing around. There's certain things you don't do, and scoring for the other team is definitely on that list, bro.
Yeah, and it's not just this. It's like...
Oh, yeah, with his resume. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an ongoing thing with him. And look, remember Ricky Davis? Ricky Davis was a lot better player than Kevin Porter, don't get me wrong. Ricky Davis is a really good player. And Ricky Davis is the same way. But look, they put up with it as long as you're putting up numbers. So, but teams will put up with it. But he's not a great player. He's a good player and everything. He's okay. But no one's going to put up with this shit ongoing like this. Did you see the coach? Did you see Toronto's coach?
He was count it.
Yeah, did he count it? Did he score for us? Oh, it's great. It was Nick Nurse was funny with that. But yeah, it's just another fucking thing. It's another fucking feather in his cap. It's just, he's going to be out of the league, and then he's going to start he'll find God or whatever he's going to do, and he's like, oh, no, I'm changed. And no one's going to give a fuck. No one's going to give him a chance. you only have so many chances in this league before like everybody just says, you know what, we're passing. It's tough. It's unfortunate, but it happens.
Yeah, it is pretty silly though, but something you just don't see very often. I think it's a la the Ricky Davis triple double where he threw it off the backboard to himself. This is probably the next best thing. NBL quick wrap. Melbourne United championship favourites, in my opinion, at the moment. If they hold on a top spot and secure home court, they'll be very tough to beat. I didn't have them picked. I think I had them picked 5th or 4th. I didn't think they'd be that good this quick, but underestimated the fact that they have numerous Olympians on that roster. They have an import spot up their sleeve to use. It is their championship to lose, bro. I'm putting the Mozzer on them. It's their championship to lose at this point. So pressure on Melbourne United, but they're playing very, very well. Delhi's starting to come into his own. Had a really good game last night, so I think they're the championship favourites. I think Perth's up there. Sydney's in the mix, just outside of the 4, and Illawarra's floating in there, and then Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. So there's. It's a very, very close year. Your Jack Jumpers were in the top 4, albeit for a couple of minutes. Pro, they were in the top 4, but they're back down. They're in the mix. I doubt they make it. I highly doubt they make it. If they do, congratulations to them. But just the fact that they're in the mix and in the conversation is sensational. Biggest disappointment so far, Adelaide 36ers let another game slip the other night. They were up pretty handily in the 4th quarter and just spewed the game up and lost. A bad turnover by McCarron late in that game, and they end up losing. And they're a very, very talented roster. They've been up and down with COVID and lineups and their coach and this and that, but everyone's dealing with the same shit for the most part. They just can't get the wins together at the moment. Very talented roster though. Isaac Humphries, I believe, their big fella, was in the G League for a couple of years and with Atlanta Hawks. I believe he's out for the year reportedly. So some injury issues again. I believe it's a knee. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I think it's something to do with a knee or an ankle. So he's out. And that's an NBL wrap. It's actually been fun to watch. It's been very, very close. It's been inconsistently hard to pick pro. So you just don't know who's going to win a game on any given night. And I think as a league, that's what you kind of want. So we'll continue to watch that space. But let's get to our stats, useful or useless. All right, pro. DeMarcus Cousins with 5 games in Denver. This was a couple of nights ago. 4 techs and 1 ejection. Useful or useless?
Pretty useful. It just basically paints you a picture of his whole NBA career. Just can't get out of his own way. But it's fun. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just one of those days, man. Might have had a bad week.
He's a hothead at the best of times, but 5 games, 4 techs and an injection, you got to do better than that. And Malone is his guy, and he wants to try to look after him and make sure he stays in the league, and he can help him to an extent. They could use him, like we've said with most teams. It's just a matter of you just can't figure it out. As far as that conversation we had earlier, you got to figure out a different role for yourself now. You're not going to be that DeMarcus Cousins that was with New Orleans.
How do you be Boban? Can you just call Boban up in Dallas and say, look, how do you stay in the league being 19 feet tall and barely being used, but people want you on their team? Just take notes from him,
Oh, it's kind of an extreme. That's like going from that's one extreme to the other. Boban's like the exact opposite. Like he wouldn't say a bad word about anyone. You could punch him in the face. You punch him in the face and he'd shake your hand and thank you.
That would be a good reality show, those two guys hanging out together, though. But, that's the thing. Look, centers they're done. Centers in this league are basically done unless you're an elite level center. So you, especially a guy like Cousins, who's not a defender, who could score, but has this attitude issue, he's got to figure out, how am I going to stay in the league? He's already been on, 11 teams. I don't know the number. I'm just guessing. But, he's only got to stick. I guarantee you, 4 techs and an injection in 5 games ain't going to keep you on that team very long. And how many more teams are going to give you a chance? So you got to figure out how to stick. We talked about the JaVale McGee thing and how he figured it out. DeMarcus's career of doing what he did is over, but he could still stick, like you said, because he's still a little bit useful, game in and game out. Once in a while, he could be useful for you, especially, mismatches. He could score in the post a little bit. You could bring him off the bench. But his career doing what he did before is done. So his new reality is being this used every 2 or 3 games type of guy. And he's got to change his mentality. But let's be honest, that ain't going to happen.
No, it ain't.
But this might be the last team that gives him a chance.
Malone will be the last one for sure. It'll be over for him if he screws this up or they move him on. I doubt he'll be back. But Joel Embiid has something to say about that center position, pro. He had 40, 14, and 10 today against Cleveland. I caught a bit of the highlights earlier on in the background. He was running the fast break a few times, throwing dimes. So not dead, but yeah, you're right. He's at the elite level.
No, the elite, the elite level centers are fine. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's down to Jokic and him for the MVP, in my opinion. I think those two are having phenomenal years. DeJounte Murray, the other night, 32, 10, and 15 with 4 steals, 11 of 18 from the field. The first 30, 10, and 15 triple-double in Spurs franchise history. That's with 15 assists. And he also just broke the franchise record for most triple-doubles in franchise history with 15, which was David Robinson. So that's a pretty small number for triple-doubles, 15, I think. I don't know what the average will be for franchises, but that just goes to that pop ball of everyone sharing his caring basketball. But useful or useless stat, bro?
Pretty useful. I mean, he hasn't played very long. I think he's like, what, 6 years in or 7 years in? And the guy's already got, the record for triple doubles, and he's put up these big numbers. It's, I'm not a big, it's the first 30, 10, 15, 5 triple double in NBA history. I'm not big on those types of numbers, but the whole 15 triple doubles is pretty good.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm going to change it.
Yeah, franchise leader.
Yeah. What do you think, Bogues? I'm going to change it. Yeah.
I think it's useful just because not so much I'm not like the whole first 30, 10, and 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool, whatever. Because you could then say it's the first 30, 10, and 15 with 5 free throws. You just continue this on this path, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I think the fact that he's already at, franchise record with triple-doubles, passing David Robinson, I think that's pretty impressive for a young guy, 5, 6, 7 years in the league. So I think they've got a stud there, and he continues to get better, and he surprised me a lot. I think he's made a huge, huge jump this year. And they've got a piece that they can see. You can see their kind of MO of what they're going to be building around in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It is pretty useful in that sense. I'm not a big triple double kind of guy, because as we talked about before about players. I'm not saying he does it, but you could just be one of those players who chase triple doubles. But it says a lot about him. It says a lot about, look, he's an all-star. He built himself into this. It wasn't like he was a top 3 or top 4 pick. It's not that easy to be an all-star when you picked a little later. I think it was in the mid-first, maybe late lottery. And I'm not sure exactly where he got selected, but he's it says a lot. It does say a lot as far as he hasn't played in the league a while and he's already got this. It's pretty good. It's good for him.
I agree. And we'll watch his journey. Julius Randle, last 4 games, pro, 28, 16, and 7, 28, 10, and 6, 36, and 5, 32, 16, and 7, and they claimed a scalp at Golden State within that mix. Is it useful or useless to tell us that he's turning the corner, pro?
Useless in that regard. It doesn't mean that he's turning the corner because he put up 4 good games in a row. He's a talented kid. It's a hell of a number to put up. It depends on what you ask on that number, though. Like, is that impressive? Yes, that's useful that the guy could play. He can play. He's a borderline all-star player that could put up numbers. Is he a great player? I don't know. But it's not that easy to do that either. You know me, I sit on fences. I go back and forth. I say it's useful. I mean, it's those are 4 hell of a fucking games.
Yeah, it's a useful
stretch. The guy
stretch,
is a talented player.
But they still suck. They're 2-8 in their last 10.
Yeah.
It's not relating too much to wins, even though they got a big scalp in Golden State, which even surprised me. 25 and 32, they're 12th in the East. So, yeah, he needs more of those runs with a few other guys stepping up for them to have any chance to be back in the playoffs. There's no excuse why they should not be in the even in the playoffs, in my opinion, but definitely in the play-in 10. They need to be in there because this is a very, very big letdown year when you look at who's above them. The Wizards are above them, for God's sake. So they have some work to do there. Juancho Hernan-Gomez, pro, has been traded 5 times the last few years. No international player has been traded more. He's currently tied with Rubio, Mozgov, and Stauskas for the most traded international player of all time, bro. He's one away. Useful or useless? And do you think he gets it?
Does he get it? Yeah, he'll get it. He'll get traded again.
He gets thrown in so many deals, man. It's just
yeah. It's useless, and I'll tell you why. I think he's an okay player. I think when he gets an opportunity, he plays well. I've been around him when he was in Minnesota, and he was a pretty good guy, actually. And I think he's a good player. But like in Minnesota, he had a pretty good role. He got traded like, I forgot when he went there, but he actually played pretty well in his role that he played there. I think he came in the Malik Beasley deal, and he was okay. And then he goes to Boston, and he never fucking plays. I didn't understand that one. I forgot if he was the one that was in Charlotte or Denver. I think he was in Denver because
he was in Charlotte too. I think. Yep.
Yeah, and like he's a good player, but sometimes you're in a situation where they're not going to use you. It doesn't matter. Like you can make 93s in a row in workouts and kill everybody in practice, and they're still not going to play you for one reason or another. I don't know why. I haven't heard he's a bad guy. He's a decent player. He knows what he's doing. I'm not saying he's a starter or anything. I think he's an okay end of your rotation kind of guy. Maybe upwards of the end of your bench. I just don't understand it. I don't think, but sometimes you're just not in the right spot, and then your salary, they just say, fuck it, we're going to throw you in a deal. And like I said, once you start getting traded, sometimes it's a slippery slope. You just keep getting traded. But I haven't heard he's a bad guy. And sometimes you just don't get the chance that you should get. And I thought he would have got a chance in San Antonio, but I was wrong there too. Useless, because I don't think he's an ass. Like, if you said DeMarcus Cousins, I understand why DeMarcus Cousins has been on fucking 2017. I get that. I don't get why this guy hasn't been.
I think he's just been thrown in, victim of circumstance. And you're right. Sorry, I was wrong. It was Willie that was in Charlotte. So we'll correct ourselves, pro, as we do. But I think it's just victim of circumstance. He seems to be second, third piece of every trade that he's kind of been in the last 3 or 4 years, and that's just the unfortunate reality of the NBA. Sometimes it's you. I think Luke Ridnour got traded didn't he get traded 4 times in 12 days or something 1 year?
Dude, Brendan Haywood got traded. Brendan Haywood and Billy Curley are 2 guys that got traded like 3 or 4 times on draft day. Like on draft day, he just kept on like drafted by this team, then traded, and then traded again, and then traded again. Like I forgot the number, but both of those guys got traded multiple times on draft day. Crazy. Like they were on 3 teams before they even got out of the fucking green room.
It's insane.
It was intense. That's a great number, though, Bogues. That was a good one. I like that one about the trade stuff.
All right, so this isn't really useless. I just wanted to pick your brain. I don't know if you've got the list in front of you. Hopefully you're not looking at it. But who would you say right now is leading the league in scoring?
Steph Curry? No, Kevin Durant.
No, Joel Embiid, 29.4. Who do you think is leading the league in rebounding?
I'd probably say Gobert. He's been high all year.
He is. Bingo, 15.07 rebounds. Assists?
Chris Paul?
Chris Paul, 10.62. Brooke Lopez is reading. I'll give you that one because that one will be hard in blocks because you wouldn't get that one. But I think really small sample size, hasn't played a lot. Steals, a name we just discussed earlier.
Chris Paul.
DeJounte Murray, 2.06.
Okay.
And PER or PER, which is supposed to be everything positive you do accumulated.
Mo Bamba.
Nikola Jokic, 32.58.
Nice.
I just thought I'd mention some of these. They're just some of our leaders in the NBA. Embiid kind of caught me by surprise, but he's having a hell of a year. Like I said, just dropped 40, 14, and 10. So having a hell of a season. I'm interested to see if his usage goes down a little bit with James there, pro. So that'll be fun to watch. But let's get into the fact or fake news and then hit the hay.
Bogues, no trade by the Lakers. So the question is, fact or fake news? The no trade by the Lakers paints a picture about their roster and also sort of sails the fate of LeBron, Davis, as far as those guys being there long term, as far as what the Lakers are going to do. So
try and explain that so the people out there can understand it with their headphones on and speakers on, pro.
Yeah, my fault. I fucked up. So, does the Lakers make no trade? Okay, does that that paint a picture of their roster, not counting LeBron and Davis? Does it paint a picture of their roster being that bad? And does it also seal the fate of LeBron James being with the organization long term, as far as, moving him along, sort of him getting to another team and him being with the Lakers long term? So
is he contracted next year? What's his contract?
So he signed a 2-year, basically $85 million deal. So next year he'll be 37. He makes $44 million, and he'll be an unrestricted free agent after next year. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how he gets out. I mean, someone will surely take him, expiring deal, and he'll be that James Harden boat of dictating where he wants to go. But I think it seals a fact. I mean, I just don't know where, but that Lakers roster is not getting it done. I mean, I would not rule out Cleveland, bro. I know people have floated this.
Yeah.
I would not rule out a homecoming to sail off into the wind. Whether they do the Bronny thing, whether that plays into it, what we discussed earlier, but that young roster with a LeBron, yeah, I mean, you like what you see there: length, size, athleticism, shooting. They've got a really good mix, so that could happen. I don't see him really going anywhere else. But maybe he just stays in LA, continues to live in the sunshine, and doesn't really care too much if he doesn't get another chip. Who knows? But I would say fact. I think their fate is sealed. Whether he stays or not, I'll say the fate of the Lakers is sealed. They're not winning another championship, at least with LeBron there, pro.
I agree with that, Bogues. I think that it just sort of definitely paints a picture of that team not being very good. Can't get into the top 6. Forget about the top 8, top 4, top 2. They can't get into the top 6 in the West. They're done as far as that's concerned, in my opinion. I think that LeBron James got one more year, so he might ride it out and become an unrestricted free agent. Here's what I'm doing if I'm the Lakers today or tomorrow, like this summer. I'm going to ask LeBron James, say, look, do you want us to pair you up with another superstar? Because he's only going to go to a few places. He's not going to go to like fucking Miami, or, Miami probably won't take him, or he's not going to go to like fucking Oklahoma City or something. You know what I'm saying? So what I would ask him, I said, I'd try to pair him up in Boston, to be honest. Say, look, would you want to go to Boston? We'll pair you up with Tatum. We'll ask Boston for like Al Horford in a package that centers around Brown from Boston. So I'm taking back Brown, and I'm taking back like Horford. And then I'm going to probably look to deal Anthony Davis to either New York with a package that centers around R.J. Barrett. Maybe I'll take back what's his name as well, Julius Randle, if they would take it, and then at least get some assets going forward that way, or even try to deal Anthony Davis for our boy Gobert in Utah, and at least get a couple of pieces back that I could use. But I think they're done. They can't make any more moves. They can't trade Westbrook, so you got to deal with his deal for a couple more years. Like LeBron will probably stay because he wants to be in LA, and you can give him whatever. But I don't think he wants to stay because he wants to win. So you can't do anything there. So deal LeBron to a team that he actually wants to go to. Maybe he doesn't want to be in Boston, but he gets to play with him. He gets to play with Tatum, LeBron, Robert Williams. Maybe you take back Smart as well, but maybe Smart stays. I'm dealing both those guys, and I'm just moving on. Let those guys move on too. I think Anthony Davis would play in New York. I think he would want the Utah thing, put him up with Donovan Mitchell. Those are deals that I think might work. I don't know if they would, but in Cleveland as well, like Kevin Love's contract, and you take back Colin Sexton. Maybe you take back the big kid from USC that they just drafted. I don't know who you take back, but like LeBron to Cleveland, I was thinking about that today. Maybe that does make sense. So that's something they can do. But I'm definitely dealing those two guys. They're done, and they got no other pieces that you could trade to get anything back for. Yeah, I mean, you were begging Boston for Taylor Horton-Tucker, for Josh Richardson, and you were going to give Horton and a first-round pick. It's crazy. So they got no value in their roster besides those two guys. That's the only thing you can do. And I don't know how long LeBron's going to want to stick around if you're not competitive. So you could trade Anthony Davis, but what are you going to get for Anthony Davis? It's going to put you in the title, the title hunt. What are you going to do for Anthony Davis that will put you in the top 4 in the West hunt? So that's what I'm thinking. So I don't think I think it does seal their fate. I say it's fact. All right, Bogues, with giving away White and a White basically for a first round pick, San Antonio is basically going to be a lottery bound team for the foreseeable future.
Fact, yeah, I think they will be. I think they'll, even if they do scratch the playoffs, it'll be late planes. So I think they're in that rebuild mode now. Talking about DeJounte Murray and a few other guys that they could develop quicker than anyone could have hoped, and they get a few pieces here and there. You never know. You never count them out. But I think they're going full rebuild through the draft, and they have to. The Spurs are not signing premier top tier free agents ever. It's just not going to happen. They're not getting a top 10, top 15 elite guy. So I think they have to rebuild for the draft, and this is the way the Spurs like to do things. So they haven't had a lull like this for a long, long time, So this is. I know they draft well, but they usually draft well whilst they're good. Now the pressure's on. You got to draft well with the pressure to get someone that can come and cause an impact for your franchise. So I think that is fact.
Yeah, I think it's fact as well. I mean, look, like you said, they've always had the Duncan, Parker, Ginobili deal that they could just rearrange their roster, pick up guys here and there. And then they started dealing, they deal George Hill to get the rights to, Kawhi Leonard. And they kept on moving pieces, and they were always competitive. Now they don't have those pieces. They got one all-star on the roster. The rest of their young guys are just okay. You're not getting anything for them. They've had a ton of cap room this past summer, and they only came away with like Doug McDermott, which I like, but I mean, he's a good serviceable, fourth or fifth option, and then you got, they had the DeRozan deal for a while, and they lost him, and they didn't really get much back. Total they got, but they don't really have anything. The cap room's useless. It's like having cap room in Indiana, cap room in Sacramento. Nobody really wants to go there unless you're really competitive, and they're not competitive. Right now. I mean, look, they're not a joke or anything, and the problem with them, Bogues, is they're not drafted in the top 5 anymore. So it's not like the year before they got Duncan, where they were really bad and had a chance to get Duncan, they got him, and then they could rejuvenate the whole franchise. They don't have that, so you're not going to get it through the free agency. You're going to be drafted in probably like at best you'd be drafted at 8 or 9 unless you get lucky in the lottery. You'd be drafted at 8 or 9, 10. You'll get a good player there, but not a great one unless you get lucky. It's going to be really hard for them to sort of get out and claw out, and maybe they could get a 10 seed, but like now losing White for basically nothing, now they're even worse. So I don't see where that's going to lead to, anything. Like I can't see them in the top 8, in the West anytime soon. So yeah, they're going to have to draft. They're going to have to get even worse draft, get a couple of drafts when they're in the top 5. And then that's how they're going to sort of climb their way out. So I definitely say fact. I say they're definitely going to be a lottery team for foreseeable future. Bogues, funniest fucking thing I saw. And it's just the whole media thing, right? Bobby Marks was on. He's like the cap guy, front office insider for ESPN. He was breaking down the trade with Brooklyn and Philly, and that's all ESPN and all these other networks want. They want to see trades. They want to see Harden in Philly and whatever. So then he goes on and said, it took some balls. I'll give it to him. He made the statement saying that James Harden's deal, his extension, which would be worth 4 years, $223 million, including I think the 4th year is going to be $60+ million that he's going to make. So he basically said that deal will be the worst in NBA history. So here's the fact or fake news on that. Fact, you agree with Bobby Marks' statement that James Harden's extension will be the worst in NBA history. If and
when he signs it. So he has to obviously sign it with Philly when he gets there or in the off season. So what he's saying is within a year or two of that deal, towards the end of it, it's going to be the worst deal in NBA history.
Well, total deal will be the worst in NBA history, knowing that he's going to be 38 in his last year of his deal, where, look, his body's diminished every year. In the last few years, his body's diminishing. He looks a little slower. Obviously, he didn't want to be in Brooklyn, just like he didn't want to be in Houston, so he probably could have been faking it a little bit, wearing that fat suit like he did in Houston, where he was like 2% body fat when he got to Brooklyn. So do you think so he signs a 4-year 223 after next year, or he signs it when he gets there, whenever this extension is going to get signed this summer? So will that be the worst deal in NBA history?
So I will go fact that last year of his deal will be the worst deal in NBA history. The last year of his deal. So it'll be 60 odd million, 62 million, whatever it is for that final year. That's going to look horrible in a couple of years' time because he's not going to be the same James Harden. And you don't fault him for getting that contract. You know, it is what it is. But there's going to be a point where it looks horrible because he's not going to be playable for 35 minutes. He's going to eat up most of your cap. And this is all about win now for them. So they know that if they want Harden now for the next year or two where he's still really good, they're going to have to eat something on the tail end of it. And that's, I think it is fact that not for the whole. So I'm going to say not for the life of the deal, not for the total deal, but I think when we fast forward in 2 or 3 years' time, when we say, holy shit, he's earning this much going into this season, that's a bad deal. It'll be up there with one of the worst in NBA history. So I'll go fact on that one.
Yeah, I'm going to say fake news just because if they could win a championship, and I agree with you, the way you're looking at it is at the end. I get it. But here's my thing. They need to do this, right? It could get them a championship. It's the only way that it's going to get them a championship in Philly. I'm not sure if they will or not, whatever. But if he wins them a championship, say he goes to multiple NBA finals and they win one championship at least, I think then I would eat the $66 million. Look, all these deals are tradable. You know, at some point, somehow you could find a way. There's enough picks where you could get it off your books. Also, Bogues, in 2 years, there'll be way worse deals signed than this one. So by the time that these new deals are signed, you're going to forget about this deal a little bit. But yeah, you're going to be looking at a 38-year-old, you know, James Harden making 66. It's going to be really bad. But if he does what he needs to do in the next 3 years, you know, where he's probably going to be at a really high level for the next 2 or 3 years. If he could do what he does, then I don't care. I don't care. It won't be the worst deal in NBA history because at least you'd win a championship out of it or two. Awesome.
I agree with that. Chip pending, I agree. Yeah, I agree. You definitely overpay for one bad contract to get a chip within the next 3 years. 100% agree with you. So that'll be the kicker then. So no championship. It could be one of the worst in 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a big deal. So it's interesting everything else that's come along with this. But look, maybe a motivated James Harden for 3 years, if that's even possible, will prove us all wrong. So, but yeah, let's just hope it all goes well. And let's hope that him and Joel Embiid get along. Wonder whose team it's going to be, Pro. That's the big question, eh?
Bogues, the big question is like, you know, you date a stripper, right? And she cheats on you. She cheated on her last 8 boyfriends. And you're dating her like, all right, she's going to change from me. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if this thing doesn't go perfect for him, he just wants out and he shuts down. So I just worry about that. But the one thing about this guy, I will give it to him. He fucking goes at it every night.
He plays,
I mean, he plays every night. Now, you may not like him. I don't like watching him play. But the guy is special in the sense that he can create points. He can pass. He's a matchup nightmare. And he is a really good player, and he brings it every night. But if it's not going his way, like, folks, 29-16, playing with one of the best scorers in NBA history with you and Kevin Durant with you, and then you also got Kyrie Irving, which would be a full-time, and you didn't like it there, and you're in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It's crazy. How much better do you want it? How much better do you want it? That's a better situation than his Philly situation now, in my opinion.
If healthy and without the Kyrie stuff, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe the KD injury is worse than we think. You know, he was real coy. He was real coy on that interview with the TNT guys about a week ago with the All-Star selections where he wouldn't give him an answer. So, and we know he's been banged up with Achilles and whatnot. So who knows? Maybe James knows something we don't. And he's like,
hey, how funny was that?
Oh my God.
With the LeBron thing where he left the Harden for the last pick and fucking Durant picked the other guy, and he sort of explained it like a GM would and totally bullshitted.
Yeah, I need another big. That was so good. And LeBron, give him credit. He's laughing his ass off. He's like,
LeBron, hey, that's like LeBron. I've never seen LeBron do that in 15, 20 years, whatever. I've never seen LeBron have that type of a sense of humor.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching him. Like, he's got a sense of humor. You just don't see it a lot.
He does.
But then the loaded question, when he picked James, like, oh, is his hamstring all right?
Oh God, it's so good.
It was good. I actually enjoyed that. I enjoyed listening to LeBron. I thought that segment was great.
Yeah.
KD was kind of like half humorous, and then on a whim he'd go real dry. It was kind of weird, but no, that was sensational. I recommend anyone to go on YouTube and Google that the All-Star selections, because for those that don't know, Kevin Durant had the last pick, and it was out of Gobert and his buddy James Harden, and he gave a whole spiel about why he needs he could have had 10 centers on the roster. He was still taking Rudy Gobert at that point, and he did.
Man.
And then all the guys giving him shit. But that wraps up this week, Pro. Thanks again. Episode 53 at Hoop Consultants for Pro, at Rogue Bogues on all your social media platforms. Continue to share this, and in about a couple of weeks' time, we'll have a pretty big announcement as far as our numbers and engagement. So I'm looking forward to that, and we'll see you next week.
See you later, guys. Thank you. Appreciate you.